the SME Instrument Program. Today, the topic treated is quite different. The reason why we're here with Marco Cantamessa, who's the president of the Italian Association for Startups and University Incubators, Claudio Giuliano, who's the president of the Commission for Venture Capital Funds from the Italian Association for Venture Capital and Private Equity, and other guests that will soon be presented, is that we want to get you to know the main players from the Italian ecosystem. We want you to get to know the guys who, more than any other, are able to shape the development of our startup ecosystem and to affect policymaker decisions. And we consider these people to be the ones who you cannot deal with startups in Italy without getting to know them. So I'll leave the stage to Marco again, who's the president of PNI Cube, that is the Association for University Incubators and Startups. Just a slight methodological note before starting. The first intervention will be by Marco, the second one by Claudio, as I said before, the third from Paolo Anselmo, who's the president of the Italian Business Angels Association, and the fourth by Fabio Conicella from the Italian Association for Technology and Science Parks. How are we going to interact? In case you have questions, just after each session, please take notice of the kind of questions you would like to know, and we are going to interact with our speakers. So Marco now will have a speech for about 20 minutes, I guess. After that, you can make the questions directly to him. At the very end of the whole process, there will be more space for questions and answers, so don't worry. If you forget something, just write it down and you'll be able to ask for it. At the very end of the whole process, very last point, all the slides show presentations that are going to be shown today on your screens, are going to be shared after a webinar via email. And in addition, should anything happen, like your house is getting on fire or anything like that, don't worry, we're going to record the sessions, and the recordings will be sent to you in the next few weeks or months. We'll see, according to our ability to develop the tapes. That's it. So we have a chat. Should you have any questions, just type it, and I'm going to take note of it, and we are going to forward them to the speakers. Thank you in advance for your attention. Let's start. Marco.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mattia, for the invitation, and thanks to everybody for being here at the webinar, with the hope that we will soon find a way to actually meet each other. So the first slide is something that you all know already, but just a very quick recap of the fact that 4 years ago, we had this big push by the Italian government to actually create what we call the Startup Act, which means something that not only gave a big push to the Italian ecosystem, but also gave visibility to it. So basically, what are the main tenets of this act? An official recognition and definition of what a startup is and what an incubator is, a lot less red tape, starting from when you found the company, you incorporate it, all the way to its eventual closure or success. Flexibility in labor contracts, incentives for investment, fast-track startup visas, of course, and then some government money going to funds of funds and also into matching funds, and more is to come. So basically, in a very, let's say, frank way, if you give a look at the Italian startup visa, it's basically saying a lot of things that Italy is, let's say, thought of that are negative in the sense of business friendliness. Let's take them away, because startups, we want to treat them in a fair way. So this is very important, that you approach Italy without a preconception that Italy is a place full of red tape, that Italy is a place where labor laws are very rigid, because basically this is not true, especially for startups. Okay, that said, what has happened in these 4 years? Well, basically that the ecosystem has taken shape, and you bet what has happened is that you have startups all over the place, all over the regions, because Italy is a very entrepreneurial country after all. But at the same time, as you might expect, you also find startups coalescing into major hubs. Because, of course, we know that startups will never be a flat phenomenon spread throughout the country. So you have startups being born all over the place, but then they tend to be attracted in a few sort of, we call them hubs. One of them, of course, is Milan. The second one is Rome. Then there's Torino, and then all the rest that are actually going down. And then you have a very important presence as well in the region of Emilia-Romagna, which is a very special kind of place for startups. The interesting thing, if you give a look, is that the first three provinces, Milan, Rome, and Torino, make 28% of the startups in the country. Now, be sure that to have 28% of anything in Italy concentrated in three places, that's magic. It really means that, yes, the ecosystem is really taking shape in a way that is normal with respect to what happens in all the rest of the world. So the question is, what is the features of Italy? Why should somebody actually think about launching a startup in Italy? Or even, let's say more interesting, why should somebody think about coming to Italy to set up a startup? Well, there are a number of reasons, and I'll tell you the reasons that I see, especially coming from a university background. The first one is that technical competencies are strong and they're also fairly cheap. We always see that many of our graduates graduate in Italy and then leave for places all over the world, but even in many major startup hubs that we all know of, and they have fantastic careers there. Now, the interesting point is that whenever an Italian graduate goes to Silicon Valley, he gets a Silicon Valley salary, which is a lot of money. If the same person is being employed in Italy, that might be something like 1/4 of the salary. So the aspect is that the competencies are here and they're fairly cheap. And the reason is why. Now, the first reason is that Italian universities have a very high scientific productivity. If you give a look at the Italian universities' output, like citations and papers, and you divide it by the number of money, the amount of money that goes in there, you see that you get a lot of bang for the bucks. The idea is that Italian universities are relatively underfunded, but the people still manage to get things up and running, and they are able to make ends meet. Now, take the same PhD student who managed to run interesting experiments on a shoestring and take the same person in a startup. Well, that's the kind of effect that you actually start seeing, and that's an important element. The same thing happens if you give a look. This one here was articles per $1 million, and this is articles per researcher. You see Italy is at the top of the rank. It's people who are able to do a lot of work, high quality work, without actually having to be paid too much. And this is citations per researcher. Again, Italy is at the top of the rank. The interesting thing is that the stats that are coming here are not coming out of Italian research, but they're coming out of a report that was commissioned by the UK Ministry of Research to benchmark the UK against the rest of the world. So we're very happy that other people actually said we're not bad. There's another element which is quite interesting, which is that all this graduate talent that we have in Italy is relatively underutilized because the Italian companies, of course, do hire the graduates, but not so much, especially because we have a lot of very small companies who probably are not even actually able to think about what to do with a graduate. What's the message here is that if you give a look at the earnings premiums, which means the difference between the salary that goes to somebody who does not have a degree and the salary that goes to somebody that has a degree, you see that the gap in Italy is relatively low. The message is, if you come to Italy and hire a graduate, that person will probably not expect such a huge salary as it would be in other places of the world, because there's not so much demand after all. So this is a very important message to all entrepreneurs who want to look for talent. Talent here is plentiful, it's good. Take it here before it leaves, and then when you have to tap into that same talent in other parts of the world, well, you will have to pay very dearly for that. Okay, there's another thing which is quite interesting. It's also a country that still has a very significant competitive advantage when it comes to engineering and manufacturing. Not many people know about it, but we are immediately after Germany. If you look at manufacturing countries that are exporters in manufacturing. Of course, everybody knows about Germany. Italy is just in the second place. And all this capability is spread around this number of small and medium-sized companies that dot the landscape. what's the implication here for somebody who wants to make a startup? Well, the point is that if you want to come here with a patent and you want to develop a prototype and then you want to move to production, you probably will not have to raise money to build a factory because the factory is already there. You simply have to tap into this competency and you find the supply chains already there. The example that you see there shows an energy saving device from an Italian startup that has both a side that has to do with pneumatics, which is mechanical engineering, and another side, you see the black stuff that you see on the right. It's basically a Wi-Fi module to make telemetry possible. Now, this device is quite interesting because it's a very complicated thing that melds together, let's say, manufacturing engineering, mechanical engineering, and IT. And, well, you know, it was developed based on a patent with about 300,000 euros of business angel money. And with that money, they made a prototype and they went immediately to production without any further investment. Because the idea was, well, the factory is there, they can do it for us. Trying to replicate the same thing in other parts of the world, not easy, because you probably would have to raise 2, 3, 5, 4 million, or whatever it is, to build a factory, and this was not the case here. The interesting point is that all this capability of making goods is very interesting right now because, you know, bits and atoms are coming together. Whenever you're talking about what's the next big thing, it's not only pure digital, it's digital coming together with physical stuff, which may be anything like Internet of Things, self-driving cars, robotics, you just name it. As a matter of fact, if you look at all the pictures that you see there, the photographs that you see on the slide, there's a company that is behind all that, and it's called Google. So it's really the, let's say, it's a demonstration that digital is moving towards manufacturing. And sometimes, like in Google's case, they even had to sort of retract from these industries because many of these projects have been sold now because of the difficulty of moving from digital to manufacturing real hard-made stuff. So the point is, whenever you're moving into that field, you really have to do something that requires competencies that are not easy to replicate. And the same thing happens for medtech, and the same thing happens for clean tech, and so on. So, and of course, not to mention other things for which Italy is even more known, which is food, fashion, furniture, tourism, and all these industries. So definitely, if you want to innovate in these fields, the major players in the world can actually be found here. So it's a very good place to actually come to. Coming to the role of universities, which could be the interesting point, since I'm here to represent PNI Cube, we're the Italian Association of University Business Incubators and also of business plan competitions, which are a major element of what we do. We have been around since 12 years, and the mission is to develop, promote the development of new innovative companies that work together with academic research. Now, if you think about universities incubators, you would usually think about the usual university spin-off, which means professor makes a beautiful invention, files a patent, gets a license, and creates a spin-off. Now, the interesting point is that only part of our startups are actually coming from there, and they're the ones that you see here, the academic spin-offs. But we also have a lot of academics, of spin-offs from the academic community at large. Just imagine young IT graduates making apps. We also have these in our incubators. We also have external startups that want to be linked to university. What are these companies? These are entrepreneurs who have a very clear business idea. They also probably know how to develop the business, but they need to tap into the technical talent that is in the university. So it's the opposite of a spin-off. In a spin-off, you see researchers becoming entrepreneurs or meeting entrepreneurship. And in these kind of startups, you actually see entrepreneurs that meet research. And we're perfectly proud of them in the same way as we're proud of our spin-offs. We also have some corporate spin-offs that are being hosted. And of course, we love to have foreign startups that want to touch base in Italy and want to set up something close to the university. It doesn't have to be the entire startup. It can also be a unit of a startup that wants to do technical development, business development, or whatever. We're very open to all of this. If you give a look at statistics, about 20-25% of Italian startups have in some way been nurtured by universities, either as research spin-offs and or as startups being incubated by members of PNI Cube as an association. So which is a fairly high number, which means that we're looking after, let's say, sizable portion of the startups that happen to be in the country. Not only that, but about half of the incubators that have been certified, thanks to this law, have an organic or very strong affiliation with the university, which means that the university is punching quite high in this game. To date, the association is formed by 41 members and 18 active startups, which means we're covering basically the whole country. It's quite interesting that if you look at the grassroots activity that we're making, it's all spread around the territory. So the idea is that entrepreneurial ideas and talents are about everywhere, and then they will probably go into a hub later on. And we cover the entire country, which also means to allow synergies with local know-how. So for instance, if you want to develop a startup in food tech that has to do with grain, well, you don't want to go to Milan there. You can go to Foggia, which is a very beautiful place where they have this kind of specialty. If you want to develop medical technologies, well, Mirandola is a very beautiful district where they are able to cluster all these companies and make them grow very well. So local specialties are something that we're able to tap into because we have universities being spread in the territory. And the last point, which is quite interesting, is that we run this big business plan competition called Startups at regional level and Premio Nazionale Innovazione, or National Innovation Prize at national level, that involves more than 3,000 applicants every year, which means this is the biggest business plan competition that we actually have in the country. What can incubators do in universities? Well, let's say the landscape is relatively varied, and it basically depends on the size of the university. Let's say that we can have 3 different models. In the smaller universities, usually it's an incubation service that is being provided by an office of the university, and usually the services are, let's say, not so sophisticated, but definitely the connection with the local territory is there. Then we have nonprofit companies that are owned by public bodies, which are affiliated with the university, and that is something where we have, let's say, quite an important role because we're very well ranked in international rankings for university incubators. But then we also have some profit-making companies that are privately owned, but they have some kind of affiliation to the university as well. So we have a mixture of pure public or public-private initiatives around. So you can basically be spoiled for choice. What is the basic process that we all do give? Well, trying to give you the benchmark, which is the one that is given by the big incubators, and it's the full process that we will probably find in any kind of university incubator or private incubator around the world. So first of all, scouting, which means a lot of one-to-one contacts, a lot of events, hackathons, business plan competitions, and so forth. We give consultancy. The consultancy we give usually is looking at the strategy part, but then we have all sorts of lawyers, accountants, patent attorneys, and so on that give the specialist consultancy that is needed to actually grow the company. We do a lot of talent management, which basically means looking into matching the talent that is already in the startup with the talent that is missing, and we try to be like a sort of a meetup for startups, if you allow me this sort of comparison. We're also fairly active in fundraising. Now, fundraising is interesting because we work with business angels, we work with venture capital funds, we also work with corporate investors. There's quite an active scene in Italy about medium-sized entrepreneurs who are doing corporate venturing without actually giving the name, but they simply do it. And again, it's the connection between the startup and the local competencies that are on the field. And we also support them in business development, both on a local basis by attracting companies. So we have the classical demo days, but we also have tailor-made events for large corporations, and internationalization by having a lot of soft landing agreements with incubators around Europe and also beyond. And of course, we're also trying to give, this is a relatively new addition, investor support, which means advisory and board representation to people who want to invest in startups, but don't actually have the time to actually do it. So this was basically it. I was very fast, hopefully, or not too fast. And well, the basic idea is arrivederci in Italia. So come and visit us, because whatever we're able to do business with you, it will all be of added value for both the Italian system, but of course to all the people who want to do business with us.
Perfect. Apparently our startup visa holders today look to be a little bit shy. So while we wait for the questions to come, I would like to make a couple of ones. So the first one is just very simply, where are the online places, resources, where to find the list, the localization of and the names of university incubators and startups. And what's exactly the difference between like startups and the National Innovation Prize?
Okay. Well, you can do it this way. You can either go to the website of PNICube, pnicube.it, or you can simply go the other way around, which is start from the university you think could have the right talent and competencies because you probably know about it, it's famous, and try to see what are the incubation services in there. These are the two ways with which you could do it. The other thing that the other question was about the difference between the Start Cup and the Premio Innovazione. Okay, so basically, Start Cups are regional business plan competitions, and we have them in all the different regions. And of course, they also have a different size. Some regions are bigger and some regions are smaller. What happens then is that each of the regional universities that run a Start Cup then have some winners, and they send the winners to the National Innovation Prize. So it's like having sort of a regional competition and then the national competition that brings together the best of the different regions. And this is a very, let's say, highly visible kind of thing. It has a lot of sponsors, it has visibility on the media and so on. So it's something that, let's say, startups love to take part to, not only because of the competition and the prizes, but especially because of the visibility. Tomorrow we will actually go to the Quirinale, which is the place where we have the head of state, and he will shake hands with winners of last year's prizes. So it's always something that people like to have because of this, let's say, media impact.
Thank you. So we have the first two questions from a startup visa holder, Stephanie Mitchell, who is currently based at H Farm, not far from Venice. So the first question is, what's the best way for a startup like mine to find talent in university? I'm looking for developers.
Okay, now I would put it this way. Don't only look for developers in the university, because we always have quite good developers that probably have dropped out and are making a living as developers. If you want to go to university, I think the best way is to do it, I would say, either formally, which is go to the job placement office of the university and try to post your, let's say, offer. And the offer can be an internship, and after the internship can come a contract, of course. And generally speaking, the students in IT that are working and want to have a career there are quite, let's say, happy about having a first stint of their career in a startup, because they know that it's more challenging than simply going into work for a large consultancy. So this is one way to do it. The other way to do it could also be, if you can have the, let's say, the help of an incubator, it could be easier, but you can also do it privately. Try to figure out who are the, let's say, smart professors in the university that are the ones who have much more of a following. We all know that professors sometimes are more, let's say, staid, more research-oriented, more, let's say, not so cool. And then you have the other ones, especially in IT, which are the ones who really raise the challenges and do a lot of things. And these people have a lot of following because the students know they're the good professors to be with and stick with them, and that's a good thing. Finally, run hackathons. Students love these things, and professors too, because it's a good way to start projects without having the professor have to think about the project. So you deliver the challenge, the professor puts the talent, and then the things happen.
Okay, so there was another question, this time by Lalit Gautam, but I think you already answered to the question. The question sounds like this: how to connect with university incubators as a foreign startup. I would like to apply, like how to get to know them also before coming to Italy, but I think you already answered to this.
We've got also websites, so you can simply go there.
And the second question by Stephanie Mitchell was, what info can you provide us about matching funds from government, which you mentioned? If I have an investor, what's the best way to receive matching funds from the government? Okay,
the matching fund mechanism was targeted at a fund of fund level. It was not matching fund at the level of individual funds. Okay, so there's not a fund that does the matching fund, except for made for Invitalia Ventures. There was not. Now there is. It's called Invitalia Ventures. Okay, so I rewind to say it properly. Okay, we have a fund that does matching fund kind of investment, and it's called Invitalia Ventures. So basically, they do A rounds. Okay, so if you have a private venture capitalist doing an A round, they will join in. Okay. Then the other thing that they did was matching funds at a fund of fund levels, which means anytime you approach a venture capitalist in Italy, it's very likely that they got some little bit of government money inside their fund as a GP.
Okay.
As an LP, sorry.
And the website of Invitalia Ventures is invitaliaventures.it, so it's quite easy to find. While we wait for possible further questions, I have another one for you that I think can be of general interest. Why, in your opinion, should a startup established by a startup visa holder participate in a startup in Italy?
Well, you can do it basically because of the visibility that it can actually give you. It's a good way to actually put your toe in the water, see what's happening, attract, let's say, more people around it. When you're taking part, you have the juries, for instance, both at regional level and national level, are all made by entrepreneurs and investors. So it's a good way to actually be known. You don't have to; it's not mandatory, of course. But if you do it, it's something that could be helpful.
And I guess it's also a matter of networking and network capital, no? Because you get to know interesting people at startups, possible investors, etc.
Absolutely.
So, okay, thank you very much. Marco will now change speaker. The next one is Claudio Giuliano. Claudio is the CEO of Indigest, probably the largest VC fund in Italy. And in addition to this, he is also the president of the VC committee of IFI, that is the Italian Association for Venture Capital and Private Equity. Please, Claudio, enlighten us.
Thank you for inviting.
By the way, before he starts, let me just highlight something. These people, Claudio, Marco, Paolo, who will talk soon, are as presidents of their own associations. They are the ones who are members of the Italia Startup Visa Committee. So they are the ones that looked through your applications and voted in favor of your application. So just for your information,
Gladly.
This is very good to say. It's working.
Yeah. Okay. So that's great. So just a few information about the venture capital, the ecosystem. So we're talking about the funds. Well, first of all, the association that groups all of them is IFI. So if you are lost or if you don't remember names, you can go to www.ifi.it and find all the list of private equity and venture capital funds. So all venture capital funds are pretty much listed there. So how is the environment? Well, it's getting stronger, definitely. You probably know about the incubating and the number of what we call the innovative startups and so forth. But there are more than 20 venture capital funds formally established, and we'll see some names later on. And actually, more are fundraising. When we at Indigest started, there were probably 3 of us. So it's growing both in quantity, in quality, and in the amount of capital raised. So this is the trend. We are still around the 100 million euro of venture capital investment per year, which is not very much, but two points. One is definitely growing, and 2016 is set to be yet another year of very high growth for venture capital funds. Then the second element is that there is an enormous amount of leverage behind these numbers. If I just look, for instance, at Indigest Capital, my firm, for each euro that Innogest has invested in its portfolio companies more than €3 of other private individuals or private venture capital funds have joined the company and strengthened the financial balance sheet of the company. So, you know, Italian venture funds, I guess, tends to be more collaborative. Often you see a round of financing made of 2 or 3 funds, and often you see, and increasingly you see the participation of foreign funds, European and US funds to the table. So where typically these investments are concentrated? Well, I would say the usual suspects, which are you know, life science, ICT, digital, but also a specific focus on manufacturing, where you know, especially high precision mechanics and new manufacturing tools and services, where Italy has a pretty strong you know, background and industry. Are we doing well? Well, you know, we try to be humble, and every quarter we try to do better than the quarter before. But numbers pretty much prove that our companies definitely perform way better than the average benchmark. And so this is you know, this is a level of comfort. Of course, you know, we are mainly motivated by financial return and the exit of the company, both through you know, trade sale or IPO. But at the end of the day, you know, your exit is dependent on how the company grows healthily, you know, becomes a real company, generates real revenues, produces real products, and you know, more and more this is happening. So that's this is like a kind of map of the venture capital ecosystem in Italy. You see the 20 companies, the 20 firms we mentioned earlier, and actually it's growing. There are a number of firms which are not listed here who are fundraising as we speak, and we see 2017 and 2018 as years where the number of players will be larger, will be increasing. Now, this is good news. It's good news for you as companies, but it's also good news for us as investors. I mean, it's and that's because in venture capital, competition among funds is often not competition but cooperation. You see, you know, rarely we compete among venture capital funds. More often, you see funds that focus on seed stage or even pre-seed stage, like you know, Primo Miglio, who recently launched, and you know, just making sure that there is the right KPIs and metrics for early stage funds to come in. An early stage fund, they prepare, of course, the ground for round B and the later stage funds. So, you know, the system is definitely growing, and also you see in this chart more or less, you know, how the appetite for stage is distributed. For instance, us as Innogest, we are pretty much stage agnostic, but certainly centered in the early stage as a sweet spot where we do seed stage and late stage. Equally, you know, some of the other funds have also their specific strategy, but you know, the best thing is really to go out and check yourself. I mean, there is no better way than just if you are raising capital, or if you are thinking about raising capital, and think about who could be the right partner. You know, just go and call, pick up the phone, or send an email. You know, it may sound strange, but we tend to reply pretty quickly. Actually, since a couple of years at Innogest, we do track continuously the rate of the time of response, and the time of response is reduced to about less than 3 days for first iteration. So, and equally, other funds, you know, are going into the same direction. So, you know, we have a number of good stories and success stories who have contributed in becoming global brands or in bringing to the market important product, for instance, in the life science arena, that have changed significantly situations where there was an unmet medical need. Last point is around the address to go. I mean, again, if you have doubts, you know, and you don't remember some of the names, go to www.ifi.it. But there is also another website you can check out, and that's the Venture App website. It's a marketplace sponsored by the IFI, the Association of the Venture Capital Funds, where you can easily log in and post your business plan, and that business plan automatically is sent to the appropriate funds, which are the funds you have in the segment you have chosen. For instance, if you have chosen, if you are in the ICT arena, it will, in seed, it will be sent to the funds that have appetite in the ICT seed. If you are in an early stage in a medical device, equally that will be sent to all the funds that have appetite there. Also, some important corporate venture capitalists, as well as venture capital funds, as well as some leading family offices who are very active in early stage investment and venture investment, are part of the Venture App program. So with this, you know, I hope we talked enough about you know, where to go. So go to IFI or Venture App. How to approach, which is, you know, just go. Don't be shy. You know, we love to hear your stories. We love to get your business plans. You know, sometimes it will not match individual fund appetites, but often will give you the reason why. And by the way, you know, there are really different appetites. I mean, this word is pretty spot on. There are a number of situations where, you know, I see my colleagues, you know, disliking other funds' investments, and equally, you know, other funds disliking the first. So I mean, there is appetite. The reason why an investment is done is because, of course, there is a great product, a great team, a great market opportunity. But equally, that is done because a specific fund is as an history in that, and as an experience in that specific segment. And you know, you just need to find that. If you can be a perfectly suitable investment and go to 10 venture capital funds and just find one or two that entertain the conversation. It doesn't mean that because the other 8 don't entertain, that there is something wrong in your business plan. It's just that sometimes there may be, but it just most often there is you know, less attention or less expertise in your specific domain. So go out, check out, I mean, establish the contact, and very often straight, without, it's perfectly fine to do it without intermediaries.
Thank you very much, Claudio. What can I say? Guys, don't be shy. I know that having Claudio and investors in front of you is quite scary. I'm quite scared too, but like, don't be shy, and please take advantage of this very important situation, and just ask us whatever you have in mind. Just before we pass to their questions, I have a couple of questions for you. So what is the most usual mistakes what are the most usual mistakes you see among entrepreneurs when they get in touch with you and they propose a business to be funded?
I don't know if that's a mistake. I mean, it's easy to talk about mistakes, and then it's very hard to be proactive and build stuff. So I would say the thing that is most that I find a pity is when the entrepreneur tries, in any way to convince the investor that they need to invest. So rather than finding in the investor a potential partner. I mean, you should treat the investor really as a partner, as a friend, someone that knows about that market. If you have, if you do your due diligence about the investor, you know that that investor is probably some experience in your market that can give some sort of point of view, some advice, and so on. I mean, we as investors, we love to invest. The sooner, the quicker, the larger amount of money we can put to work, the better. And we love to entertain discussions on how to create value, and we love to also contribute to entrepreneurs who are searching also for the right way. I mean, when a company is ready, and it can be your company today or your company, few months from now, after some more reiteration and more thinking and more work has gone into your project. But once a company is ready, we love to partner and to go ahead. So don't think of your potential investor as someone on the other side of the table. It's really going like to meet your best friend, but who's an expert in your field, who has a relevant network, and say, hey, this is my projects. That's what I have understood and what I have not understood. That's how I plan to better understand what I don't know yet, and let's work together.
Thank you, Claudio. So we have another question, this time from Russia, from Ilya Kalugin. The business plan must be in Italian?
Absolutely not. If you go to our website and most of our colleagues' website, other funds, our own websites is in English.
Thank you. Another one, this time from Stephanie. So Claudio, how can someone like me bridge the gap between an accelerator, I'm at H-Farm, and seed funding? The feedback I've gotten from funds that I've spoken with say that we are too early stage.
There are specific investors.
Well, there are specific investors in seed, and again, you may have. We need to be pragmatic here. Maybe there is still some work you need to do, or maybe you have not found the right fund which has the right expertise, in your field, which translates into excitement for what you are doing. And that's normal, even in the US, even in Israel. If you go to a venture fund that either got many years ago, some bad experience in that specific field, they are burned out and they don't want to touch that field, or they don't have enough expertise. And once you find someone who has excitement for your segment, everything is easier. And so don't stop to the first 2 or 3 funds. I mean, go and chat with others. I think, if I may say, that you may consider venture capital, going on roadshow with venture capitalists as a way to get free advice and free consulting. At the end of the day, you get an hour and a half discussion, sometimes in depth, sometimes with follow on, and it's value for you. And at the end of the day, you may have the worst thing that can happen is that you spend some time, you got some advice, and you got some contact, and you got some points of view that are complementary to to what you know and what you have. The best thing is that you also get money.
I can add something because after you there is the intervention of Paolo Anselmo. Could be maybe helpful for early stage because business angels also are very
Sure.
very important for early stage.
What do you mean? There's another question about this. What do you mean by early stage? When we mean early stage in Italy, we intend to say.
Okay. To me, so let's consider. I mean, different segments and different industry have different definition. For instance, in medical device, for me, an early stage is a device that has proof of concept through, I would say, through animal tests, initial animal tests. Okay, so in ICT digital, again, it depends if there's a SaaS model, is it digital model, is it commerce or anything, but typically you have the very first customers, you probably have, below hundreds of thousands of revenues, but you have the first metrics that prove that customers like you and, come back to buy your service or product. Before that, it's seed.
Okay.
There is another questions.
Actually, we have two. One is again from Lalit Gautam. He asks a very general question, in my opinion. How is it that the Italian venture capital market is so different from many other European countries? And then what points do we have to consider before pitching to venture capitalists in Italy?
I'm not sure why you say it's different. It's smaller, but it's growing. I don't know any other. I mean, again, when we started in 2007, we were 3. Now we are 20. So we are smaller, but have a high rate of growth. I could not easily say one element that distinguish in terms of style. I mean, our seed-focused venture capital funds are pretty much like the seed-focused venture capital funds in UK or anywhere else. Our early stage equally and late stage as well. I mean, it just and of course being smaller ecosystem, you don't find maybe all the level of choices. I mean, that you find somewhere else. I mean, you may find, for instance, funds that are just focused on artificial intelligence in the Silicon Valley. Well, artificial intelligence is a big trend, but it's you have just ICT funds here or digital funds here that also do artificial intelligence play. So, and how was the?
He was asking for tips on how to pitch towards Italian venture capital funds.
How would you pitch to any venture capital fund, which is by being very prepared, by doing your homework, and be ready to discuss. Okay. A pitch is not starts with a one-way monologue, from the entrepreneur, but it's really a two-way discussion.
Cool. Lalit was also asking about alternatives to venture capital, that is public funds or public loans on bank credit. But this was the object of the first webinar we had. So we have basically the Smart Start Italia program, which is public funding, 0 interest rate. For innovative startups, we have the public guarantee fund on bank loans that covers up to 80% of loans provided by private banks to startups up to 2.5 million euros. And then we have also, as an alternative to bilateral investment from business angels or venture capital funds, we also have the equity crowdfunding tool that is very interesting. But again, this was more the topic of the first webinar. So I know, Lalit, that you were not there the first time, but don't worry. we'll be able. First of all, you can check out the slides that we shared with you via email. And secondly, should you have any specific question about this topics, just drop a line. You know that you have the info.italiastartupvisa@misc.gov.it email address to which you can make any sort of question, and we answer with enormous pleasure. There's another question to you, Claudio. Can the place of startup legislation in Italy or its specialization have any influence on fundraising? So basically, Andrei is asking whether there's, in your opinion, any linkage between Italian startup regulations and the size and the quality of the Italian venture capital market.
Well, certainly the legislation has increasingly helped both companies and the venture funds to raise more money by providing a number of incentives. But then, you know, I'll speak more like Inoges, if you don't mind, and just to, I mean, of course, you will find in Italy, you know, some specific appetites that are linked to the history, you know, of the players around the table. And, you know, for instance, as far as we are concerned, we like a lot companies that are centered on, if it is ICT, digital, the food value chain, food tech, the fashion value chain, and the financial value chain, fintech. And if you talk about medical device, then, you know, we love cardiovascular, neurology, oncology, because we have seen lots of consistently within the last decades, you know, good research and good companies coming out of these segments.
Okay, very last one. So Michael Darnowski asks, what are the chances to get support for eco-tech projects which may get good connection to green energy topic and cogeneration? Application for green tariffs? It's quite unclear to me, especially the last part, but I think, yeah.
You know, there are some funds who were pretty focused on that, and I would say Atlante on one side, and you know, Invitalia are pretty active there. So maybe Invitalia is a very good place to start, actually, since it is a co-investment facility. They have a broader knowledge of this segment. Also, Enel as a good corporate venture program.
Okay. Very last question from myself, just in a few tweets, as many people would say nowadays. Your feeling and your vision about the corporate venture capital industry in Italy?
I mean, it's growing and it's fundamental. For instance, globally, I'm seeing, you know, a huge shift in medical device. For instance, I mean, global, I'm talking at US and Asian level, and European level, from increasing participation in early stage deals of corporates that eventually may be large acquirers. That's something that, you know, 15 years ago when I started this, you know, venturing in the venture capital world was like, you know, a big question mark, and we were a little bit scared, but it's working a great deal, and especially because most corporate have matured their investment strategy. They know that they need to support financially without being too much into the governance of the company, and not asking for limitations to exit. So it's going great. Italy is growing. Enel and Telecom Italia are two great examples.
Thank you very much, Claudio. So now let's set the clocks. Here at Team Italia, it's 3:12. We'll have an 8-minute break. So see you again at 3:20. Thank you for your attention.